Hello and welcome to another episode of Thick Slices and Deep Cuts. This evening I will be going through the catalog of German progressive rockers, space rockers, ELOY. ELOY formed, I think technically they formed in '69, but their first album came out in '71. And they have, according to Prague Archives, they have 20 official releases. I am solely going to focus on the first 12 albums, so we're talking 71 to 84. It's not that I don't follow their newer stuff, it's just that I have an affinity for the first 12 albums from 71 to 84. Those are the albums I know, but I will, by the time we get done ranking these 12, I'll definitely go through the things they've been doing since this run. And there are certainly some notable things that they've done, post 1984. But basically, a German band from Hanover, Frank Bornemann. He's always wearing this goofy-looking hat, but he's the leader of the band. And I'll kind of go through a couple of the different incarnations, different lineups and things like that. But a band that very cool, very interesting. Nobody quite like them. Frank sings with this heavy German accent, so even though he's singing English lyrics, it's really sometimes hard to understand what he's saying. But for some reason, it kind of works. It all kind of works. I think they started out as just we'll go through it during the rankings, but it took them a little while to figure out what they wanted to be as a band, or maybe they just enjoyed doing certain things for a couple of albums and then switching, and then finally they kind of became the band they are. They're kind of like, they started out kind of like space rock, I guess krautrock. I mean, they are German. They've got hints of a few different bands from the era, but ultimately they kind of just found their sound. So, but at any rate, I'm going to rank the first 12 albums they did from 71 to 84, which is probably considered their most, popular era. And I don't think, maybe my 12th pick, I think everything on here is good. It's just if I'm ranking something lower, it probably has more to do with their stylistic direction than anything. And so even if I rank something low, it doesn't mean it's not good, and I'll explain why maybe I ranked it low and why maybe you might like it a lot more than I do. I've got 11 of the 12 albums, so we'll just get into it. So coming in at number 12, and this is the only one I don't have a physical copy of, this would be their debut, self-titled debut from 71, simply titled ELOY. And the reason I rank this 12th is, I always say this, but it's a starting point. It's a band with an unusual lineup. Other than Frank, and I think one of the other guys, I can't pronounce his name, but really only two guys even made it to the next album. So this is a one-time lineup, a different singer. Frank sings on everything else, but not on this album. And the first album is, it's like heavy rock for 71. It's somewhere between trying to write catchy, hooky songs and yet having some sort of like a Deep Purple, Black Sabbath, pretty heavy for 71, I would say. And it's not bad. I mean, it's just, I think the song ELOY is on there. That's fine. It's good. Something Yellow, I think, is the long one. So even on their first album, they do an 8-minute song. Something about a soldier, the Paranoid Soldier. That song is good. So there's a little stretch of decent material in there. It's not all, they do a pretty good job of staying away from what I hate to hear in 70s music, which is sort of that boogie thing. I hate it when I hear the boogie thing. They do a pretty good job of, while they channel a little bit of the Uriah Heep and the Deep Purple, and certainly the Sabbath, they stay away from some of that boogie stuff. So it's fine. It's an okay album. I'm looking at these 12 albums, and that one is ELOY before they figured out who they wanted to be, or before they got on their creative run. And I think if you talk to Frank Bornemann, he would even say the same thing. He would say that it's technically an ELOY album, but our first real album was the next album. But it's not to discount that album. And I think if you're this band that I'm ranking, they did 7 of these 12 were in the 70s and 5 of these were in the 80s. And so if you're a 70s, if you want to hear 70s, you're probably going to rank this higher than I am. If you like the 70s prog over the 80s sound, you'll probably, be more interested in listening to this than where I have it at 12. But still a fine album. There's nothing wrong with it other than it's just it's a beginning from way back in 71. So there you go. Coming in at number 12, the self-titled debut, ELOY from 71. Um, and so coming in at number 11, an album that is widely regarded by the fans of the band, and it's the second album from 1973. I have Inside. This is a good album. Sidelong track, Land of Nobody. It's good. It's weird. It's I don't really know what krautrock is. I have a CD from a band called Can, and I guess Tangerine Dream is not technically krautrock. They're more progressive electronic. But it does have sounds on here that remind me a little bit of like Tangerine Dream's like Alpha Centauri or Zeit, something way early on, another German band. And also that sound at the beginning of Echoes from Pink Floyd where Rick Wright's just hitting that note. They're doing that same thing on here. So you get kind of that vibe. You get kind of that Echoes, Floyd, some sort of early Tangerine Dream. Certainly rocking out. This is space rock jamming out. Long songs, spacey. So Land of Nobody is cool. The title track is kind of dark. Future City's really cool. It finishes with Up and Down. Longer songs. It's cool. I like this album. I mean, I'm ranking it 11th. I like it. I think I'm ranking it 11th, not because it's 11th, but because I ranked everything else in the classic thing. I ranked everything else up, and this just fell down to 11th, but there's nothing wrong with this album. And in fact, it gets really strong reviews on Prog Archive. So if you're into their early jamming, there are two albums that are specifically like this. And if you're into this like wide open, long song, jamming kind of improv space rock, little experimental, little sound effects everywhere, this album is perfectly cool. It's just, I probably listened to this the 11th most of the 12. Not that there's anything wrong with it, I just think, and I'll explain a little bit later, there's an album that I feel like does this, but does it better on all fronts, but we'll get to that in a sec. But there you go, so coming in at number 11, their second album, a lot of people sort of call this their first real release with the ELOY sound from 73, a great year for prog rock for sure. I have Inside. Okay, so coming in at number 10, another super solid album. This would be, I guess, their fourth album from 75. I have Power and the Passion. Again, if you're into the 70s stuff over the 80s, you might say this is one of their best albums. And this is their first classic progressive rock album in that it's a concept, or there's a storyline that ties everything together. It's about a guy that goes back in time to Paris, I guess, journey into 1358, so there you go, that's the year. Love Over 6 Centuries, Mutiny's cool. The Bells of Notre Dame. The Zany Magician's pretty cool. I like that one. It's kind of a heavy one. Again, this album's cool. It's they would improve upon this style on the next album. But this is a band that does these two albums are classic examples of them doing something cool, and then the albums that follow them do these, but even better. So. But I like this album. In fact, I listened to these ones a lot during this review. A lot more so than the ones towards the top, and I found these to be all good and interesting. And before doing this listing, I was like, I can't believe I'm ranking this 10th and Inside 11th, but, you're just trying to figure out which ones are your favorites, which ones are most important to the band, which ones do you listen to the most, and again, it's just all opinion, but again, if you want your ELOY to be all 70s sounding, these albums I just mentioned are classic 70s sounding albums. Frank singing. By the way, Fritz Brandau is the drummer on these in the early days. He was in the band on 2 different tenures. But this is a cool album. It's their first, what I would call, classic progressive rock album, in that it has the storyline that connects everything. It's got short interludes and long songs and the whole 9 yards. So there you go. Another awesome album coming in at number 10 from 75, their fourth album, Power and the Passion. So coming in at number 9, this is, of the 12 I'm ranking, this one and the debut get the lowest marks, but it's a guilty pleasure album for me, and I wanted to rank it lower, but how can I? I can explain why it's, 9? But from 83, I have Performance. So we've jumped far ahead. We ranked their first album, their second album, and their fourth album, and now we move ahead to 1983. And while this is not their first album in the decade of the 80s, this is their first one that's just pure 80s sounding. It is just synth heavy. I don't know if they're using a Simmons kit, but just the drums sound 80s suddenly. The synthesizers are totally 80s. They've got that classic vocoder, but now it's total 80s sounding. And again, gets low marks. I think people give it low marks because they think it's cheesy. They say it hasn't aged well. It's not progressive, but I can hear the progressiveness in it. In Disguise opens it up. That's got great energy, great rhythm. Klaus Mitchell is their bass player. He's been their bass player for some time. He's a great bass player, so even when they're playing 80s stuff, he's still just ripping away on the bass. The drums are super tight, and they got the nice little fills and stuff. The vocals have gotten a lot better at this point. So I'm a fan. I'm a sucker. This is a guilty pleasure album. In Disguise is great. Shadow and Light is so progressive. For 83, when nobody was doing that, Shadow and Light's cool. I think this album just gets a bad rap. I think people see the cover and they hear the initial sound and they're turned off by it. But I don't know, this song Heartbeat is the best song on here. It's got a great chorus, great vocoder, synth thing. It finishes with a long one, A Broken Frame, which may not be the greatest 8-minute song, but at least it sounds a little epic. Mirador is like an instrumental that's not the best, but it's still listenable. It's kind of weird and interesting. There are two songs I would tell you to avoid like the plague. Surrender and Fools are pretty bad. So some stuff works on here great, some stuff misses totally, but I still think it's an interesting mess of an album. But I think it's not even a mess. It's just stylistically, it's a vast departure from their classic 70s prog rock sound. But it's still progressive and it's still well executed. And it's only coming in at 9th out of 12. But it gets their lowest mark of the 12 I'm reviewing. But for me, it's not that bad. And again, I kind of have a guilty pleasure for the 80s ELOY. So there you go. Coming in at number 9. I guess this was their 11th album from 83. I have Performance. Okay, coming in at number 8. This was their third album from 1974. We're going back again. Floating. So Floating, these two are a pair. Inside and Floating. Inside from 73 and Floating from 74. These are a pair. And Floating, I feel like, just does everything Inside did, but just does it more, does it better, does it just 1 year further advanced. The musicianship is better. I think they have a different bass player, but for the most part, this is, Fritz Randau is still your drummer. Floating comes out, it's a nice little 4-minute opener, but The Light from Deep Darkness is the long song on here, and I think it's like their Land of Nobody from Inside, but I like this song a little bit more. It's just more captivating. This is probably their heaviest album. I'm not saying it's metal, but it gets metallic in spots. It's heavy, it's aggressive, the melodies are a little darker and stranger. The Light from Deep Darkness is this band's just getting better each album. And you could say that the Power and Passion that came out after this is even better, and I'm not saying it isn't, I'm just saying I prefer listening to this album more. It's still got that space rock kind of thing, that vibe that they had for Inside and Floating. Castle in the Air is awesome. It just comes out with this like metal riff that you would hear like, I don't know, some thrash band do or something, but they're doing it in 74. It's like these two guitars doing a fifth harmony. It just sounds like classic metal, and the song's over 7 minutes. It's awesome. Plastic Girl's cool. Madhouse is heavy. Fritz Randau's just throwing down, smashing up drum beats. That song is heavy. This is by far their heaviest album, and it's got the spacey thing going on in the experimentation, much like Inside had, but I just feel like here it's heavier, the ideas are better, the execution is better, the whole 9 yards. So, and again, I'm sort of ranking these based on what are my favorite ones to go to. And of their old stuff, of their first, I guess, 4 albums, this is my favorite of that very early era. Before they sort of got a set classic lineup. They did 4 albums before they got a set lineup, and of those first 4, this is my favorite. of those. So there you go, number 8 from 74. I have their third album, Floating. Okay, coming in at number 7, again, another album that gets fairly low marks, but an album I reach for all the time. From 1984, I have Metromania. I love that album artwork. Rodney Matthews, who's done some other bands, he provided artwork for some ELOY. There's a little bit more of it that goes over here. Metromania. This does everything. Performance was the album before this. As I drop that. And this album just improves upon that in every which way. So much like Floating improved upon Inside, I feel like Metromania improves upon Performance. They're a pair. Those albums are a pair. And I think Escape to the Heights is great energy, great synths, so synth heavy all over this album, so 80s sounding. Seeds of Creation is not the greatest, but it's still kind of cool. All Life is One is incredible. It's incredible. It's just this vocoder voice is one of my favorite songs. The Stranger is like the deep track on here that nobody talks about that I think is really good. Follow the Light is an absolute classic. I don't care whether you like 80s Eloy or not, that's a classic. And then it kind of finishes slightly weakly. Night Riders is not the best song in the world. The title track, Metromania, is kind of interesting in that it's showing off all the synthesizers. I'm not saying this is a perfect album, but I just think it's a very awesome, it's the best album cover, and it's just it's a total improvement in every which way over Performance. And it's just, I gotta say, for what it is, it's one of these Eloy albums I reach for the most. I mean, I'm always, when I'm in the mood for Eloy, I'm in the mood for a lot of their albums, but I'm always in the mood for Follow the Light and All Life is One and even The Stranger. So there you go. An album that's kind of ridiculed by fans because I guess they probably want that classic 70s sound, but hey, we're deep into the 80s here. In fact, this is the last album, this is their 12th album, so this is the most recent album you're going to see me rank. What can I say? I'm a fan of the 80s version of the band. So coming in at number 7 from 84, I have Metromania. And excuse me one moment while I grab the CD that fell to the floor here. All right. And I just wanted to point out the fact that I don't know if this band has a lot of phases or not, but they do have these albums that kind of come in pairs. And here's another pair. So here you go. Performance from 83 and Metromania from 84. So there you go. What was this? Number 7, Metromania from 84. All right. Okay, coming in at number 6 from 82, Time to Turn. And another classic album. The only thing that's unfortunate is while that album cover is cool, man, they had Rodney Matthews do an alternate album cover that was released only on Heavy Metal Worldwide. And if I have the effects, I'll put it up here in the corner so you can see it, because that album cover was the best. And they only did it for a short run of vinyl in the beginning, and I am ashamed that I'm not holding that version of the vinyl up when I rank Time to Turn, because I've got to get that at some point. But Time to Turn is great. It's 82, so what is this, the album before Performance? This is just another cool album. This is the same lineup that did Performance and Metromania, but this doesn't sound quite as 80s. I mean, it's an 82, but they're still holding on to this progressive vibe that's just coming out of the 70s. You know, Through a Somber Galaxy is cool. Behind the Walls of Imagination is awesome. Just synth galore. You got great bass playing, and Fritz Randau has returned for this album. They use a clavinet. I don't know anybody that uses clavinet and makes it work. I mean, there are a few bands, but man, they make that instrument work. Time to Turn is super catchy, the title track. Magic Mirrors is excellent. End of an Odyssey is the long one here. Then it kind of finishes quietly with The Flash and, you know, Say Is It Really True? Those are okay, but this has 7 tracks, and the first 5 are all, you know, it's just classic Eloy. It's just Eloy being Eloy. I mean, it's what, 6 out of 12. I obviously like the album. It's just another, you know, this is why I'm ranking Eloy and specifically the first 12 albums, is because everything's classic. Especially once you get to the top, you know, pretty much all of these albums are classic. But this is just another super solid release from the band. Like I said, this is a lineup that basically was there for 5 albums, from 80 through 84. They released an album each year. And other than Fritz Randau replacing a drummer in 82, this was the same lineup for a while. You got Hannes Fulberth on keyboards, Hannes Arcana on, I think it was the other guitars. You still got Klaus on bass. You got Frank doing the vocals. So anyway, classic album, awesome album. Time to Turn, number 6 from 82. Okay, at number 5, this showed a big shift in the band's sound. Not a huge shift, but a pretty dramatic shift. At number 5 from 1980, I have Colors. So they had this lineup in place for the previous 3 albums, and everything was big and 70s and progressive, like Rush or Yes, with touches of Pink Floyd. And on this, Frank has a whole new lineup. Well, except I take that back. Klaus is still your bass player, but he's got a different drummer. He's got a different keyboard player, which is critical for this band. This band is all about synthesizers. And instead of a 4-piece, it's a 5-piece, I believe here. Different drummer, and they've added the 2 guys named Hannes, so it becomes a 5-piece. We heard Horizons to open this. Illuminations is incredible. Giant is one of these cool deep tracks that nobody talks about. Impressions is really nice. Child Migration is cool. Gallery is a quick, cool one. It ends with an acoustic thing called Sunset. They pushed a single for Silhouette. That's really the only song I don't really care for on here. But that was actually the one they pushed. But I mean, if you've got 9 tracks and 8 of them are good, to me, this is just classic Eloy. This is them updating their sound in 80. New lineup, new decade. Sounds good. I mean, I reach for this one all the time. And like I said, if you're going to give me a 9-song album where 8 of the tracks are good, and the one that I don't care for is actually a single that did all right for you, great. And again, Giant is the deep cut on here that nobody talks about. Just classic. Illuminations and Horizons to lead it off. Those are 2 of my favorite songs. Impressions is short but great. Gallery is short but great. Sunset is short but great. Child Migration is cool. So there you go, at number 5. With that interesting album cover. I've got Colors at number 5 from 1980. Okay, man. Coming in at number 4. This would be, their 5th album from 76. I'm going with Dawn. So, they just kept getting better. They had a self-titled album in 71. Then they did Inside, which was interesting, and they improved upon that with Floating. And then they shifted gears and said, we're going to do these progressive rock concept albums. And they did Power and the Passion. Well, this Dawn is like a better version of Power and the Passion. It's another concept. The huge difference here is Frank has scrapped that old band, and he's brought in Klaus Mitchell on bass for the first time. He brings in Jürgen Rosenthal, incredible drummer. If you like Neil Peart stuff, incredible drummer. They brought him in from the Scorpions. He was on Flight of the Rainbow from 74, Scorpions. You can hear this lineup right here. And I forget the full name of the keyboard player, Detlef. So this was probably their most classic, talented lineup, this 4-piece lineup, and it started here. And they kept it together for 3 albums for the rest of the 70s. Just the detail on here, if you listen to Power and the Passion, you're like, I like that, it's impressive. Well, pound for pound, everything on here is just like more detailed. The performances are incredible. The songwriting's deeper. Between the Times. The Sun Song is the famous one, but The Dance and Doubt and Fear, both lost, Introduction and The Decision. Gliding into Light and Knowledge, and probably my favorite is the last thing, The Dawn. I guess it's got it in French as well, but The Dawn. This is just an album I like to just put on and let it go for the 43 or 46 minutes or 49 minutes. I don't even know how long it is. It's a fairly lengthy album, but not too long. Just really well done. And it's still got that old 70s sound, but the performances, like if the production quality isn't the greatest, the performances just make up for it. And the production is better than the previous album, and I just think the detail on here it's just outstanding. So, if you're thinking, man, he's really dogging on that early Eloy, well, this is from 76 and it's my number 4. This is where it becomes classic to me. So there you go. At number 4 from 76, the first one with this awesome lineup, I'm going with Dawn. Okay, at number 3, probably their most famous album and their proggiest. If you just like your prog rock proggy, I'm going with number 3 from 77. I'm going with Ocean. Okay, so this is after Dawn. So this is 1 year after Dawn in 77. Same lineup, just 4 long songs. You know, everything's, I guess one's under 10. I guess both of them are short, but Poseidon's Creation, we just heard it. One of the best things they've ever done. So progged out. You know, again, we're talking like Rush. If you like Xanadu and stuff like that, they kind of get that kind of progressive where they're showing they're feeling good about themselves. They're showing off their skills on this album, which is awesome. It ends with Atlantis Agony, which is 15 plus minutes. In between, you've got the Incarnation of Logos, 8.5 minutes, and then Decay of Logos, 8.5 minutes. So everything on here is epic and long and excellent. Great album cover. Here's that classic lineup, by the way. I've seen that picture before. I think it's the Prog Archives one. But here's that full cover art. Pretty cool. Hope you can see that. But yeah, this is their most popular album. If you have any of their live albums, they play 3/4 of this on their live albums. And you know, when I first got into the band, I think this was the first thing I heard. I thought this might be my number 1, but over time, I think it's great. I think it is a number 1 album. I've got 2 more here I got to talk about. So there you go. At number 3, classic from 77, Ocean. Okay, coming in at number 2, I was thinking this might be a number 1. This is the 3rd and final album with that classic lineup. The one after Ocean from 79, I have Silent Cries and Mighty Echoes. This one's easy to get into. I mean, it's dark and Floydy and still got a little bit of that Rush and Yes and all that stuff, but it's not as difficult to get into. Astral Entrance is like Shine On You Crazy Diamond to start. Then you go into Master of Sensation, which we're listening to right now. The Apocalypse is nearly 15 minutes, and that's really cool and drifty. Pilot to Paradise is another good energy one that's still long. De Labor Solus is really cool, and it ends with, I guess, your title track. It's called Mighty Echoes at over 7. Just an awesome album. I'm going to have to speed it up here, but again, this is a number 1. So basically, my 4, 3, and 2 were in order. That classic lineup that started with Dawn, and then the next album after Dawn was Ocean, which is number 3, and then that next album after Ocean, which is Silent Cries and Mighty Echoes at number 2 from 79. If somebody's like, where do I start? First of all, I would tell them you could start anywhere with Eloy, but start here. This one's easy. It was easy for me to get into it. I pretty much, after one listen, I was like, that one's good. If you like that, this one's awesome. It's probably a little more challenging, but if you're up for your proggy prog, this is the one for that. But there you go. Number 2, the last one of the 70s, the last one with that classic lineup with Jürgen Rosenthal on drums. Silent Cries and Mighty Echoes. And so there could only be one. Number 1 from 81, because I like the 80s Eloy. I have Planets. Again, they had an alternate cover. I'm going to put it up right here. I want that alternate cover version of this album on vinyl. Cool spacey intro. On the Verge of Darkening Lights is great. More awesome synths. Point of No Return has great synths right to open it. Mysterious Monolith is one of my favorite tracks. Again, real spacey, synthy, proggy. It's 81, but I don't feel like they've fallen into the 80s trap that prog bands did yet, where the sound just goes to hell. It's awesome here. At the Gates of Dawn, Sphinx we heard earlier. It might be my favorite track they ever did, Sphinx. It sounds like video game synthesizer music. And it finishes with Carried by Cosmic Lens. Those 2 songs tying together. To me, this is just my favorite listen for Eloy. And again, I said these albums came in pairs. It was supposed to be a double album, they didn't let them do it, but these are a pair. Planets and Time to Turn are definitely a pair. So there you go, coming in at number 1 from 81, I've got Planets. So real quick to re-rank it, number 12, their debut from 71, ELOY. At 11 from 73, Inside. At 10 from 75, Power and the Passion. At 9 from 83, I have Performance. At 8 from 74, I've got Floating. At 7 from 84, I've got Metromania. Follow the Light here is from this. At 6 from 82, I have Time to Turn. At 5 from 80, I've got Colors. At 4 from 76, I got Dawn. At 3 from 77, I have Ocean. At 2 from 79, I have Silent Cries and Mighty Echoes. And at number 1 from 81, I have Planets. So there you go. A couple other things. This came out in 78 during the Ocean tour cycle. So you got three of the 4 songs from Ocean, 3 songs from Dawn, 1 big epic mutiny from Power and the Passion, and they play the title track Inside from that album. So this is cool. It's a double vinyl. It's a long single CD. So that's in 78. So that's right in the heart of their career right there. Just simply titled Live. And more recently, they kind of broke up after Metromania. They did a soundtrack that's goofy. They did an album called Raw in 88, which isn't good. They did an album in 92 called Destination, which isn't very good. Then they kind of got back together and did The Tides Return Forever, which is okay. Then they did probably their best thing post-Metromania, which is Ocean 2, The Answer, in 98. That's pretty good. And then in 09 they did Visionary, which is it's okay. And then more recently they've done 2 albums about Joan of Arc, the fire and I don't know, there's something in the pyre. It doesn't do too much for me. I will say if you want to hear anything post Metromania, just start with Ocean 2, maybe The Tides Return Forever. But what I did was I went and bought this awesome double live CD. It plays the highlights from Ocean 2, 3 big songs. Paralyzed Civilization is one of the best songs they've ever done, and that's from Ocean 2. It almost sounds like Dream Theater or something. But it's got those highlights. It's got 3 songs from Visionary, and it's got The Tide Returns Forever, The Tides Return Forever, the title track from that album. So you get those highlights on this live album, and every song they record on here is better in the live version. You got Child Migration from Colors, Paralyzed Civilization, Mysterious Monolith from Planets, another new one, Age of Insanity, The Apocalypse from Silent Cries and Mighty Echoes, Poseidon's Creation from Ocean, Time to Turn, The Sun Song from Dawn, Horizons, which we heard open, Illumination, so you get plenty of colors and planets on this. Follow the Light, which is what we're listening to here, The Tides Return Forever, and on and on. I think I'm running low on time, but I think that pretty much covers it. So, ELOY, awesome band, ranking 71 to 84. This live album's great, and if you don't know about the newer stuff, just go out and get Reincarnation on stage. It highlights that newer stuff as well as the older classic stuff. So I think I'm out of time, but thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.